working moms.
Hey, working dads.
Hey, aspiring working parents.
And allies of working parents.
Are you in search of your pillow?
Does it take you 24 hours just to get out the door in the morning?
Are you the family ATM?
Or the family Uber driver?
Are you on a Zoom call for work while carpooling while also watching a practice?
If so, welcome to our world, the Parents at Work podcast.
I'm Lori.
I'm Jason.
We are married.
And we have two wild and crazy redheaded boys.
We're here to shine a light on the roller coaster ride that is working parenthood. I'm a healthcare lawyer and founder of a working parent community called Mindful Return.
And I'm an executive coach with Ready, Set, Launch, LLC. I wrote a cool book called Relationships to Infinity.
And I wrote a cool book called Back to Work After Baby. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Parents at Work podcast. We are so excited today, Jason and I, to be welcoming to the podcast the inimitable Laura Vanderkam, time management expert extraordinaire. I'll tell you a little bio, but I'm sure many of you who are listening have heard of her already. Laura, thank you for coming and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So little bit about Laura. She is the author, most recently, of Big Time, A Simple Path to Time Abundance, and several other time management books, including I Know How She Does It and 168 Hours. She's the host of the Before Breakfast podcast and the co-host with Sarah Hart Unger of the Best of Both Worlds podcast, which I will note, the Mindful Return community that I lead loves that podcast and has for a very long time. Laura lives just outside of Philadelphia with her husband and her 5 children, who are now 19, 16, 14, 11, and 6. Hooray! Laura, it's good to see you.
Yeah. Great to be here. Great to chat with you guys.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. This is awesome. And big congratulations. I mean, you've written multiple books, so no small feat on every single time that one does come out. So I'm all for celebrating. But I'm curious from Laura at the beginning, how did you get interested in time management and where did that come from?
Yeah, well, I always joke it's not because I'm always on time everywhere. I would love to be, but I'm late. So sometimes, I'm late to various things and people get to make a joke about time management experts being late to things, but that's all right. I just find time fascinating because everybody has the same amount of it, right? Like everybody has 24 hours in a day. Everybody has 168 hours in a week. We are all working with the exact same building blocks. Plenty of people have more money than other people. People are smarter or better looking than the rest of us, but nobody has more time. And so when you find people who are doing amazing things with their time, it's like, well, it's not like they have extra hours that the rest of us can't access. It may be that they're allocating their hours in interesting ways that the rest of us can learn from. So I just find that part of it fascinating. And yes, again, there are advantages to having more resources. I mean, they're whole you have the same hours in the day as Beyonce. And people are like, well, Beyonce has all sorts of other things that the rest of us might not, like billions of dollars. But the problem is, even Beyonce can't pay somebody to sleep for her. Right? Even,
Right.
Beyonce can't pay somebody to exercise for her. You can outsource parts of the logistics of child raising, but if you want to have a relationship with your kids, you're still needing to be the one who is there doing that. So it becomes even more hard choices when you do have so many options for your time. So I'm fascinated by the people who do a lot with their time, and that's what my career has come out of studying.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm interested to know how your love of time management has intersected with your own personal working parent story. How did that evolve?
Well, I mean, they're very much related. I'm always fascinated by the people who are expert time management gurus or whatever, and who are not responsible for other people. And that's fine. Life can be challenging to manage in other ways too, but it does kind of change the game when you
Mm.
have lots of little people, or I mean, if you have lots of elderly relatives or something who are dependent on you, in a way that is just different from what people who don't have that experience. And so I feel like I was always reasonably good with my time. Like I did well in school, did good stuff in early jobs and all that. But it really became more necessary when I became a working parent and realized, well, I want to still do a really good job with my work. Like there are things I want to achieve. I also want to have a calm and happy home life. I would like to grow my family over time. And I still have things I want to do on my own. Like I like to sing, I like to run, I like to read. So how am I going to fit all these things in? And it turns out the good news is that there are 168 hours in a week. So I find they do all generally fit.
So which came first, the first child or the first book on time management?
The first child, actually, the first child
got
came. Yeah. I mean, I was writing books before that, but on different topics. So the time management kind of came out of sort of fitting all those pieces together.
Yeah. I also had a question about whether your work intersects at all, and if so, how, with the global conversation that we've been having over the past, let's call it decade, about the mental load, invisible labor, unequal allocations of that labor, how it gets tracked, I mean, we could do a whole podcast just on that, but I'm curious your initial thoughts on the intersection.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have a conversation about mental load. And this is not really new. I mean, I believe it was like in a Gloria Steinem book I read from like the 1970s or something that talked about, well, it's one thing for a couple to take turns telephoning, that's what they did in those days, a babysitter. But it's another thing to know that a babysitter needs to be called. Right.
Yes.
So that's a early example of
Been
like talking about
popularized, yes.
popularized this idea of the mental load and who carries it. That said, I think it does show up to some degree in time, and it also is a question of how we manage our time. Like I have spent a lot of time thinking about how I can minimize my mental load in different things that I don't wish to have a huge mental load for, and that shows up in how I structure my schedule and how I do my planning, various things like that. So it is all related for sure. However, I don't want anyone to think that like, oh, even if you manage your time well, you're still going to be buried under this avalanche of small to-dos that you'll never get out of. Like, no, it's possible to relax and have some free mental space as a working parent as well.
Over to you, Jason.
I love the frankness that you bring to the conversation on time management. And for me, I'm always fascinated by, you had talked about work early on. I'm always fascinated by what you were doing in high school and how that might have influenced you. So, what was your first job? The odd job or summer job, or what were you doing? High school, early college? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah, well, my first jobs were babysitting. I did a ton of babysitting growing up. For neighborhood kids. I think I started when I was about 11 years old, which strikes me as crazy now.
Now?
But,
Sure.
maybe 11-year-olds were different then. I don't know. Parents had different standards back then. So I was babysitting for neighborhood kids. A friend and I in my neighborhood at the time hosted a summer day camp. Like we would have
Wow.
kids come for a couple hours during the day. We'd just be in one of our backyards, and so thus could leverage the two babysitters and have the kids do stuff and give parents a little break in the day. And so started that as a business.
I take it no one signed any release forms.
Yeah, no. Well, that's the lawyer in you coming out, Laura.
Yes,
I think
yes.
if you're trusting your kid to a 12-year-old and
Right.
13-year-old, like you've
Yeah.
moved beyond that.
Mhm.
In any case, and we so I did that. I mean, I worked sort of odd jobs. Like I worked in a gym daycare for a bit. I worked in Fazoli's Italian Restaurant. If you have any Midwestern listeners who are fans of Fazoli's Italian Restaurant, I worked there. I worked
What did
at
you do there?
working at the front counter. Like, can I take your order? Do you want breadsticks with that, sir?
He's
I worked at Osco Drugs. I delivered newspapers. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
variety. A
Variety.
lot of variety.
Yep.
Yep.
Good
And
for
lots
you,
of
Laura.
kid-related activity. Any like one thing that stands out as what you learned from the early days of kid management?
Just trying to keep them busy, keep them active, thinking about it. Thinking about what you intend to do with the time makes it go a lot better. I mean, obviously, for our day camp, we had a structure of it. Like, we're going to do arts and crafts from 10 to 10:30, and we're going to play, this game from 10:30 to 11. And so, having an idea, being somewhat flexible with it, obviously, when life arises and, the craft gets done in 10 minutes accidentally or, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Nice.
Okay, so let's pivot to the book itself. So you've written an entire bookshelf practically of books on time management. My personal favorite is 168 Hours, although it's kind of a close call. Juliet's School of Possibilities still sits in my heart. What is new about this book, which personally I think could have been called 8,760 Hours, but I get that, I'll concede that Big Time is a better name. So what are you bringing to the world with this book?
Yeah, good question, Lori. That sounds like something I had to put in my book proposal of like, why
Yeah.
why another book, Laura? Why
Yeah.
should we bring this new book into the world? I would say this is honestly my favorite topics in time management and ways of looking at time that I have not explored at length before. And so I wanted to, each of the chapters had been in the running for doing a book on it on its own, basically. And then I was like, well,
Wow.
actually, I can sort of run them all together with the theme of time abundance. And so in general, Big Time is about what happens when you move beyond a story of time scarcity and truly do believe that you have time for what matters to you. And I think it's helpful in trying to get to this mindset to zoom out further. Because when we think about our time, we're often looking at a crunched Tuesday and all the things in our lives that we're trying to fit into a crunched Tuesday. And there are probably not enough hours in the day to get to everything that you want to get to. But it doesn't really matter that there aren't enough hours in the day because we don't live our lives in days. Time is bigger than that. We can look at a week, 168 hours, and that right there starts to show some perspective. Just as an obvious one for people with 168 hours in a week, if you work 40 hours a week and sleep 8 hours a night, so that is 56 hours per week, you have 72 waking, non-working hours, right? Which is quite a bit of time. Like even with a full-time job, it's almost twice as much time as you're working. It may not feel like it, but it is.
Right.
But then we can zoom out further. Like look at the whole year. There's 8,760 hours in a year. And from this big perspective, this perspective of big time, even things that feel huge in the moment and in the happening are very small percentages of this. You devote 100 hours of your year to something. Well, that's going to feel like quite a bit of time while you're doing it. 100 hours is a lot of time, but it's a pretty small percentage of your waking, non-working time in 8,760 hours. So when we have that perspective, we start to see just how much can comfortably fit into a life.
What is, if you had to name one of the 100 or 168 feelings that one can have in the human experience, which ones would you hope people would have at the end of this book?
One of possibility. I guess one of hopeful possibility is how I would put it. I mean, I view time as such a gift that we even have time to manage. I mean, it's pretty improbable that we're all here, that we're living at this moment in time where we have so much, agency over our lives. And so the idea that we get to manage our time is pretty cool. And then it's magical in and of itself, like all the cool things we can do with our time. Like if you're organized and honest about it, there's very little that can't happen if you would like to make it fit into your life.
As you're talking, I'm reminded of that scene in Wonder Woman where she looks at the guy for the first time and has the watch on, and she's saying to him, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, this tells me what to do. It's the time." And she's laughing at him as if like, "Why do you have something to tell you what to do?" And I love how you're reframing this concept of time as a friend, as someone you can have a really good relationship with. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Laura, this book felt like it could perhaps only be written by someone of a certain age with a certain life perspective. Do you think that's true? Like, it struck me this couldn't have been your first time management book. Like, it seemed like you had a much more mature perspective. Not more mature as in the other one was less, but just it reflected a stage of life, perhaps.
I mean, well, you think about things longer. I mean, time is our friend, and in many cases, you can't see things in a certain way at the beginning of a journey that you can start to see them more later. I mean, just as a
Hmm.
practical matter, I'm not a terribly patient person, um, and yet there are certain things in life that you come to see will just happen with time. I mean, book writing is like that. When I start a book, I'm always like, okay, well, we're seeing, I may have an outline, I may have the stuff I want to write about, but things come to you in the course of spending time on it that you could not see earlier on. It is
Hmm.
only through the sheer fact of continuing to put more and more time into it and coming back to it, that these connections become tied in your head. And I see that with everything I write. You mentioned Juliet's School of Possibilities. It's definitely that case with a novel. You can make an outline, but nothing's going to be great. When you first write it, like you have to keep coming back to it, and then you start to see, oh yeah, well, that's funny. I mentioned that clock in chapter 2, and I could reference it again in chapter 8, and that makes the book more rich and full, but you won't see it
Mm.
until it exists. Right? So you
Yeah.
have to have this long-term patience with time to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. No, that really hits home. I'm working on a memoir, and the one of the people I work with who's a writing coach says if you know what you're going to write before you sit down, then it's probably not worth writing. It's like it needs to evolve over time. Um, okay, so I just have a one sort of stray question, which is there does seem to be, at least in the United States, this like insatiable appetite for time management advice. Do you think, and have you seen that's true? Well, if you think it's true in other countries, or is this like an American thing?
Well, it's funny because I think it's our perception of what is an American thing. Because
Mm.
I keep reading people being like, "Oh, I'm not like the typical time management advice." It's like, okay, we're all arguing against the same straw man, I guess, then. Or, like, I'm not trying to make you more productive. I'm trying to make you enjoy your time more. I'm not sure. I think we are just as sort of into killing time as anyone else. I'm
Mhm.
not sure that we spend our time any better than anyone else. I can look at where my books are translated into. There's interest in time management in other countries.
Mm.
The Asian market turns out to be good for
Mhm.
time management and productivity books. That's an interesting little
Good to
factoid
know.
there. Yeah.
Cool.
very,
Cool. I
very,
want to
very.
turn now to the actual book itself and just start digging into some of the themes and the chapters. This is a consistent theme throughout a lot of your books, but you talk about tracking your time, and you say that you believe that tracking your time makes you happier about your time. Why is this?
Yeah, so this is what happened when I had 279 people track their time for a week as part of writing Big Time. I measured them on various dimensions before and after the week that I tracked, that we had them track. And I have this time satisfaction scale that I use that's basically trying to turn your feelings about time into numbers, which can then be measured and monitored over time. And I found that their overall time satisfaction rose significantly over the course of the week. Their agreement with the statement overall, I have time, I have enough time for the things that are important to me. I'm like, no, I'm mangling it. But, that basic statement rose 25% in the course of a week. And so there's two things happening. One is that tracking your time makes you feel more accountable for your time. So it nudges better choices in the same way that keeping a food journal will, make people not want to inhale an entire pint of Ben and Jerry's and then have to write it down. So, same thing with time. You're like, I don't want to document my 3-hour YouTube binge on my time log, so I don't do it. And then I
Mhm,
feel better about my
mhm,
time in general.
mhm.
But it is not just that. It is not just that, because that's sort of specifically like yesterday, I spent my time better. Overall, spending your time better is more about the stories we are telling ourselves about our time. And when people go into time tracking, many of us have stories that are one way or the other. I mean, they can be different things. Sometimes it's, I work around the clock, or I never see my family. I have no time for myself. I'm spending my life doing housework. These are all different stories that people are telling themselves about their time. And a time log will show that almost universally, these stories are not true, right? So even having a lot going on doesn't mean that there is zero discretionary time in your life. One bad day doesn't mean that another day was. Working late or traveling at one point in the week doesn't mean like you never saw your family. Often there are fun things that people are doing. Maybe it's not as much as they want, but it's generally not none. And so a time log shows us, I really do think the truth sets us free. And so knowing where the time goes helps us change the narrative that we are telling ourselves about our time.
Mhm.
So, instead of I work around the clock, it's like I work late Monday and Tuesday, and I had more reasonable work life balance the rest of the week. I have no free time whatsoever becomes I don't have as much free time as I like, but I did have an hour this night. I had 2 hours here on the weekend. I had bits of time here and there. I wonder what I can do with those bits to feel more rejuvenated in that time. And these are just much more helpful stories, because they nudge us to making the tweaks that can help us enjoy our lives more.
Mm, beautiful. Um, I think tracking time as you're describing it helps us see a much more complicated answer and truthful answer than all I do is work, or all I did was take care of my kids, which sort of leads me into my next question. In the chapter about becoming the ringmaster, in which you compare life quite aptly to a circus, you say, quote, there is no need to simplify just to simplify. Complexity isn't the enemy, chaos is. Complexity and chaos are not the same things at all. Indeed, certain kinds of joy are only possible if you choose the bigger life. Tell us about this distinction and tell us a little bit more about what you were getting at here.
Yeah, I mean, when people say my life is a circus, they tend to mean it as chaotic, but that is just completely an inaccurate perception of what a circus is. Like a circus is complex, but it is incredibly orderly. Like nobody is getting shot out of a cannon at the wrong time.
Right.
Everything happens when it is supposed to happen. Like these tricks are executed within a fraction of a second. The whole sequence is well thought through. You can extend the metaphor that people are performing their tricks over a net, right? So they've thought about a backup plan. So I mean, we should aspire for our lives to be like a circus where everything is well orderly. It's happening when it's supposed to happen. There are a lot of moving parts, but everyone goes in the sequence that those parts are supposed to go. You've thought about option B. Should option A go awry? So I just think this is a much better way to think about life. And because of that, like, I mean, there's this whole thing out there about minimalism, simplicity. Like, I get it. I get the appeal. But like many of us have lives that are just structurally complex. And so
Mhm.
there's no point being like, well, one child would have been more simple than 5. It's like, well, I have 5. So here we are. What are we going to do about it now? Right. And so because of that, I like a lot of the sort of simplify stuff just doesn't land. Even like if one kid is in 5 activities, that feels like a lot, but 5 kids in one activity each still is a lot. Like, so
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
just paring it back does not necessarily help. So we have to learn to live with the complexity and to manage the complexity to avoid chaos. But when we follow certain rules of how to manage our time, how to structure our schedules, how to think through possibilities, I think we can live lives that are complex but not chaotic at all.
Mm. It's reassuring to hear that. I like that. Because there is this allure of how simple simplicity can sound, but it may not be the most fulfilling for everyone. Mm.
And I love the metaphor of the circus, the way you're talking about it's so time driven. And one of the benefits of the circus is actually it's entertaining and interesting. And so if you combine those two ideas, you actually can run a circus with order and have plan Bs. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, nobody wants to watch a circus where everyone's just sort of trudging through what they're doing. Like, gosh darn it, I've got to juggle my 7 plates again. Like you want it to look fun. You want to look like it's exciting, and same with our lives. Like, and so I mean, one of the strategies I talk about in that chapter is managing for delight. And you can build a great schedule where everyone's getting to go where they're supposed to be going. But if you don't have anything you're looking forward to, like you need to go back and work on it again. Because that's what makes our circus more exciting for everyone.
I think this segues into the chapter that you talk about dream big, plan small, which I thought was really interesting, where you talk about putting big and worthwhile things into a schedule actually makes you feel like you have more time, because in your mind you become the kind of person who has the time to do big and worthwhile things. Tell us more about this and your annual projects.
Yeah, so there was a fascinating study that I reference in this chapter that basically people who were tasked with doing something meaningful with their time actually felt like they had more time than people who were just sort of given a windfall of time, like people who were called into a laboratory to do an experiment and then allowed to leave early. So that when they were surveyed later, the people who did this sort of worthwhile thing with their time felt like they had more time. And it's because time is all about the stories we tell ourselves with it. And so for the past several years, I've been doing lots of big year-long projects, which I break down into daily small steps. So the example to open the chapter, reading War and Peace. So War and Peace is a very big book, but it is comprised of 361 extremely short chapters. So read 1 chapter a day and you are done with the book in a year. And each chapter is just taking like 5 to 10 minutes to read. Like it's almost nothing. It feels like, I mean, some of them are so short, it feels like, did I even read today? But, you keep doing it and your bookmark keeps moving forward. And December 27th, if you start on January 1st, you finish, right? You get through 361 chapters. And, I cannot tell myself that I have no time whatsoever if I can read War and Peace. Like in my mind,
Yeah.
like whatever story I'm telling myself has to be like, you have the time to read War and Peace, Laura. So, and I think we can all sort of access that narrative. Like you have the time to do big things when you collect bits of time ephemera and put them into one project instead of sort of losing them haphazardly here and there. But then when you do big and worthwhile things, you become the kind of person who does big and worthwhile things. And that becomes your identity. That becomes your story. And it's a very different perspective on time.
I love how you're talking about time as a collection, as someone that comes from a family of collectors that stores things. That image is actually how you collect your time is an opportunity. I love it.
I want to stay with War and Peace for just one moment and that idea of the big project. In the book, you gave a piece of advice around when you're tackling a big project like that, and you've divided it up into certain increments. Even if on a day when you have a ton of extra time, don't do extra to get ahead. Why is that advice? Why? Why shouldn't you take advantage of that extra time that you have to read a few more chapters of War and Peace?
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of know yourself with this, but I think for a lot of people, sort of it's the promise that it's not that hard day to day and that you are consistently doing it. That you're not asking if I'm going to read a chapter of War and Peace today. The question is when I'm going to read my chapter of War and Peace today. It makes it easier to keep the promise long term, because the problem with you read 6 chapters one day because you've got some time is that then you're going to skip a couple days in the future, right? Like,
well, I'm on track.
I'm on track. And then, but now you spent like 6 days not reading it, and now you've got to get back into it. And this is where people fall off the wagon, right? Like it's not a consistent sort of regular habit. And when you're skipping days, then it becomes easier to skip more days. and to not
Mm-hmm.
get back into it. Now, I mean, that's again, it's you have to know yourself about this because there's many things in life that we can do regularly, but not daily. Most people do not forget to go to work on Monday, even though they've been off for 2 days. So, we can manage things that we don't do daily. That said, for especially something big and chosen, not required, knowing you're going to finish exactly when you plan to, is what allows it to feel more doable day to day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super powerful. All right, I want to pivot to an important sentence that you wrote that I just have to read for our audience because I felt seen in this sentence. On page 65, you write, "There are no typical weeks." People often ask me things like, okay, so what's a typical week look like in your, CEO world or whatever? And I'm like, I don't, that doesn't exist. How can having an awareness that there just isn't such a thing as a typical week help us?
So people often tell me after they've tracked time for a week, like, "Oh, well, this wasn't a typical week."
Mm.
And I think if you put a survey on it, it would probably be at least half people saying that it wasn't a typical week, which right there defies any definition of typical that
Mhm.
we could possibly come up with. But what it is that we have images in our minds of what a typical week is, that we're drawing our identity from that.
Mm.
And often it is the difference between what we think is typical and what our time actually goes toward that explains some of this gap between, where we think the time is going and where it actually does. And so a common one, many people think they work more hours than they actually do.
Mhm.
Because in their minds, a typical week is a week where you are uninterruptedly at work. But I'm sure, as many working parents know, there are many weeks that are interrupted for some reason or another. A kid is sick, there's a childcare issue, you have some school event, somebody has a dentist appointment, you have a dentist appointment. Like, there's just a million reasons that a work week wouldn't look exactly like what you think of as the typical work week. And if it is compressed in some way or shape or form, that explains why you are working fewer hours than you think you are actually working. And that is neither here nor there. This is not gotcha, like, ooh, you thought you were working 50 hours a week and you're averaging 42. But if you think a week is 50 hours, you're going to structure your projects differently. You're going to think about what you can take on differently than if you know it's averaging closer to 42, right? Like taking on a 10-hour a week project when you think you have 10 extra hours than you actually have is going to stretch out the timelines of everything and make you feel like you're behind. Well, you're not behind. You just used the wrong number for the denominator, right? So you've got to make sure you know where the time is going if you want to make good choices about it.
Amazing.
And I love how you're framing the optics of how much we think we work versus the reality, because we think about work so much and that relationship to work. How did you get to the Better Workday Challenge and the 3 strategies behind it? How did you land on this as you were thinking about time and how we allocate time to work?
People, if you ask them, do you like work? Like, how do you feel about your work? You tend to get fairly positive answers. Which makes sense. We live in a free world. Like you can quit if you want. Like there are other jobs out there. So probably the daily experience isn't too miserable for most people, or you'd be seeing something else. However, how you experience work on an hour by hour basis can often feel pretty negative. Like people are wishing time away. Like you recognize that you have a well-paid job and interesting coworkers, but you're stuck in this boring 10 a.m. staff meeting and you are wishing that the minutes are moving faster than they are actually moving. And so it's that part of work that I am fascinated by. Like, can we improve the actual hour to hour experience of a day at work? And what are some ways that we can do this? And so kind of looking at the various things that research has found, like most people need to feel happy about stuff. I mean, we want to have a sense of um, progress and competence. We want to have a sense of relationship, relatedness to other people and belonging. We want to have some autonomy. And so how could those things play out in a work week for a large proportion of people? And here I come up against the problem that a lot of productivity books, a lot of time management books are written with the assumption that everyone has sort of an information type job where you are managing emails and meetings all day.
Right.
And many people are, but many people are not, and so it's like a totally different thing. What productivity advice, like what advice for enjoying a workday more could I give that would be applicable to somebody in an information job, but also applicable to, say, somebody managing a construction site, or somebody who's a nurse or a teacher, or who is a police officer, or somebody who is, just, there's a million jobs that don't involve like daily managing of emails and meetings. So, yeah, like what would those be? And so, I came up with three things: basically, spending an hour more a week on the work you like the most, spending 15 more minutes deepening a work friendship, and taking 2 intentional breaks per day doing something you would enjoy. And it turns out when people do this over the course of 3 weeks, they like work better. And people say, like, I thought about quitting my job. I may still do that, but I see that there's a lot I can do to make the daily experience better, even, within that.
And I love that you're giving people agency to step away. You're giving people agency to go talk to somebody, go reach out to somebody. And even to be professionally selfish, what are the things that you actually like to do in your day? Do more of that. It's almost as if it's a guiding light to, like, here's the fun in your workday, which is pretty cool. And that work doesn't have to be horrible all the time, and owning that.
Yeah.
So
Well, and even just changing a small amount of it, right? Because, I mean,
yeah,
10 minutes twice a day, 15 minutes a week with a friend, 1 hour on the work you like the most. I mean, we're talking small bits of time here. This is a couple hours within, many hours that somebody is at work. But it doesn't actually take much to change the entire experience of time. I mean, just if you had a meeting, like, you're getting coffee with an old friend on the weekend for an hour, you'd probably be looking forward to that for quite a bit of time. And, you can engineer the same sort of mindset shift at work. Like, you're having lunch with a favorite colleague on Friday, you're going to be looking forward to Friday. If you're reading 10 more pages in that mystery novel when you take a break in the afternoon, you're going to be looking forward to your break in the afternoon. I mean, there's just all sorts of ways you can change it.
yeah, to give someone the opportunity to even look forward to something rather than dread the day, to like bring more of themselves in their day. Um, that I enjoy. And I think that's really helpful. Your chapter, which I think is, for me, fascinating. We talk so much about work, but then you have this chapter called Embrace Your Golden Hours. And this, like, blew my mind, like, completely blew my mind, because it's like this idea of, for me, I don't even think about this tranche of time. And you're not talking about retirement years. What do you mean by embrace your golden hours? And maybe Coach Lori and I on how we get through these mushy evening hours.
Your golden hours are the hours after work and before bed, on weekdays. So you think about the golden years. Retirees talk about the years that they have for family and leisure after their careers are done. And so we get a miniature version of this every weekday evening. We have hours for family and leisure after your work is done. And so, I'm fascinated by evenings because I think even people who have good morning routines, who think of themselves as being really productive during the workday, evenings can just fall apart. I mean, a lot of this time passes completely mindlessly. There are things that have to happen. Obviously, if you're a working parent, you've got kids who need to be fed, put to bed, all that stuff. But those shoulds don't take the entirety of the time. And for many people, we're talking actually a fair chunk of time. There's time diary data in the United States, at least. Most people are done with work and work related responsibilities by 6 p.m. People tend to go to bed somewhere between the 10 and 11 p.m. hours. So we're talking 4 to 5 hours in the evening. You look at, 4 days, we're talking 16 to 20 hours. Like, it's a lot of time. And yet many people can't account for anything that happened during this
Uh-huh.
time. So,
Truth, truth.
I mean, that's a shame. I mean, we shouldn't write off any time as unusable. And I'm not saying you need to do more productive things and air quotes during that time, but I want people to be able to enjoy this time. And so the best way to do that I've come up with is to think about what you could do for 30 minutes in the evening that would be enjoyable to you. So something that is not work, housework, or the physical care of family members. What could you do that you would enjoy for 30 minutes?
We
So
went on a walk last night for
that's
30
good.
minutes, and it was
Nice.
lovely.
Well,
We had
there
not
you
done
go.
an
You had your
evening
golden
walk.
hour intention. You did it. It was good. Now you feel like the evening actually happened.
Yeah.
And what it turned out to be, Laura, it was because normally we take a morning walk on Mondays, and we had different things that we had scheduled. So we said, all right, we will do our morning walk in the evening. And it felt great. It was so different. We're like, all right, we're done with dinner. We're going to go for a walk. And I was like, oh my
Our
God.
children said, "Is everything okay?" We're like, "Yeah, it's fine. We're just going for a walk."
Just going for a walk.
And then we got home. Our oldest said, are you sure everything's okay?
It's okay.
Yeah, I know we had to have a deep discussion.
Right.
Things
I was
we are.
like, no, we just went for a walk.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you. So you focus on something that you'd find enjoyable.
yeah. Well, but that's a great example. Like going for a walk with your spouse is a wonderful way to spend that time, and it's probably much more meaningful than each of you being on your phones, scrolling around various stuff for time, because that's what we do, right? Or try to stream something, but nobody can agree on what it is, and so you don't get started until later in the evening, and then there's not enough time to watch anything substantial, and the time just disappears, right? It's spent on something. Time is always spent on something, but if we sort of redirect it to something that we are actively choosing for 30 minutes, it does a couple good things. One, you are looking forward to your fun. Two, you get to have your fun. And then three, it changes your story about this time. One of the reasons that people feel they are working all the time is because work is structured. It involves commitments to other people. It is happening. Whereas your time outside of work has none of this structure, has none of this intention. And so it doesn't feel like it's happening. It doesn't feel like it is as big as work, even though we mentioned earlier in this episode, like that if you're working 40 hours and sleeping 8 hours a night, you have 72 hours that are not spent working. And yet it doesn't feel like 72 hours. Why does the 40 hours you spend working feel bigger than the 72 hours you're not? Well, I'm not saying you need to make those 72 hours as structured as the 40 hours you are working, but putting a little bit of intention into it can make that time feel much bigger.
This reminds me of the parenting advice I got when the kids were little and we had our second child, about labeling one-on-one time with each kid and saying to them, hey, this is special, Mommy Sawyer time or whatever it is, because then it sticks out in your head and theirs as the fact that you spent that time together, even if you wouldn't have done anything different, you still would have spent the time together. It strikes me that act of labeling this is like, ooh, that was our 30-minute special walk that we took.
You notice it. Yeah.
It makes it stand out more. Yeah, I love that. Awesome.
Branding.
Yes.
Branding the day.
Branding
Actually, that could be the book title. Big time. Branding the day.
In a chapter that's called Be Open to Serendipity, you share an idea that I'd never thought of before, which is shifting our mindset about our email box to one that says, email can bring possibilities. I was like, whoa, that is a welcome contrast to inbox angst. So every time you open your inbox, do you think possibilities are in front of me? Or do you also still feel some of that dread?
I don't necessarily always like dealing with my email either. But the truth of the matter is that is how people are going to reach out to you, right? Maybe this will be different in 10 years or whatever. But currently, if there is somebody in the world who wants to get in touch with you that you don't know well, that is how it is going to come in, right? Because it's asynchronous and, it doesn't ask anything of you by being there. And so, in life, there's all sorts of, we all have to talk about saying no more often, and there's a lot to that. But any, new big relationship or opportunity or adventure is going to come out of something that you don't know. Because if you knew about it, you'd be doing it. But it's the things you don't know that are coming to you that are going to lead to these big breakthroughs. And so email is one of the ways it can come in. And, it's not frequent. It's not like you're getting them daily. Maybe if you're Beyonce, I guess you're probably getting offers to do great things every day. But most of us are not. But, that is where it's going to show up. And so if you approach your email with that mindset that there are possibilities in there, you can start to feel a little bit less resentful about it, and also think about which opportunities you might want to say yes to, instead of just having this mindset of I need to say no to as
No,
many
no,
things
no, no,
as
no.
possible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so in the chapter called 8,760 Hours, Not 24, or Think 8760, not 24, I have to read the Snoopy related paragraph. So it says, in any case, I prefer the mindset of a cartoon I came across on Instagram featuring bootleg Peanuts characters. Charlie Brown says, "Someday we will all die, Snoopy." And the dog replies, "True, but on all the other days, we will not." What are you getting at here?
There's a lot of discussion in kind of time circles, I guess. There's people use the phrase like live every day as if it was your last. And that sounds good, but it's also impossible. Like, I would not spend my last day on Earth on an airplane, but I definitely want to, like, see New Zealand. I want to, I love writing books. I want to write books in my life, but I probably wouldn't spend my last day on Earth writing a book, because what would be the point? You'd be wanting to do other things with the time. So, I mean, you have to have this long term perspective that you won't die tomorrow if you want to accomplish most of the things that people are getting at with that language of live every day as if it was your last. The idea is that you want to do big things in your life because you could die. I mean, you will die at some point, but you can't live it as if this is your last day. You have to have this future forward focus and thinking that I will make it through probably, a reasonable chunk of time into the future. And I need to think about how I want my life to be and what I can do now to make that happen. I mean, this is just sort of actuarially true. You look at the tables of which fascinating if you enjoy that sort of thing. I looked at the Social Security Administration's actuarial tables and found I had like a 0.02% chance of dropping dead in the next year. I was like, well, that's great. Seems likely that I'll keep going for another year.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it maybe something like if you make it to 85, then you're 90% likely to make it to 86? I was like, this is very reassuring.
I mean, most people will not make it to 90, right? Like most people are not going to make it to 90. But if you've made it to 89, the odds that you make it to 90 are actually very, very good, right? And so whatever age you are, it's the odds of you making it through the next year are very good.
Are high. Yes.
Very high. And so you can think forward at least to the next year of what would I like to do with my time? What would I like to see happen over the next year?
Yeah. Awesome.
Love the optimism.
Yes. Given that this audience is working parents, I particularly want to hear you tell this story about the new mom who had recently been promoted to become a manager. Can you tell us that story, please?
Yeah, I mean, this just so sums up for me the sort of hard choice, hard trade-off corners people talk themselves into. This woman was a new mom. She was also newly promoted into management. And one of the things she knew is like, okay, well, my team it would be good if I would take my team out for drinks or dinner, right? Like we'd be able to get to know each other in a more relaxed environment. So they'll trust me. Like if I'm giving them tough feedback, they know it's coming from a good place. That's, good management strategy right there. But if I take my team out for drinks, then I'm not home putting my baby to bed. And then I'm a bad mother, right? Like I'm missing bedtime. I'm a bad mother. But if I'm not taking my team out, I'm a bad manager. So it's like I no one can have it all, right? This is the stories that start these awful essays on how nobody can have it all. It's like, okay, does your team want you to take them out absolutely every single night, as in 7 days a week, 30 days a month, 365 days a year? My guess is no matter how amazing a boss you are, nobody wants to spend that kind of time with you. It's not expected. It's not desired. Like we're talking about taking them out every 2 weeks or so, maybe. And which means that you could be home putting your baby to bed 13 out of 14 nights, which sounds like pretty much all the time to me. So why are we looking at one night when the two things are in conflict? When if we zoom out further, They are not in conflict at all. I think we do this to ourselves for no reason whatsoever, other than to just make it look like a hard choice moment when there isn't one there. I mean, this is something that just has bothered me for a great many years. I mean, because I write about this topic. I mean, you've seen all those articles out there of like, the entrepreneur's dilemma, like business, friends, health, family, choose two.
Pick two, yeah.
Yeah, or the four burner theory. Like we've got work and family and health and sleep, or only one can be on fire at a moment or something. I don't know. I mean, people are obsessed with this idea that I'm telling you like it is the hard truth that you've got to choose. No, you don't. Like you don't. I mean, there's just like with 168 hours in a week, could you be working 55 hours a week and still being a very present person in your family's life and still like going for a run with a friend one morning and like meeting a friend for coffee one day during the day? And, can you get 7.5 hours of sleep every night? Absolutely you can. Those do all in fact fit in 168 hours. People like to create these hard choices where they do not truly exist if you think holistically about your time and manage it well.
And Lori, I mean, I love what you're talking about here, Laura, because the angst that a lot of parents go through when they take their first work trip away from their child, and it's like, oh my God, all these things.
My baby. It's like, no, you haven't.
Exactly. And so, Laura, you're helping us zoom out to the totality of you're focusing on the time we do have, which is exponentially larger than the ones we don't.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people run numbers on things like this. So, for instance, somebody who has what we would look at as a travel-heavy work schedule. Let's say that every other week they are gone Monday through Thursday. Okay, so 3 nights they're gone every other week, so like twice a month, right? But that is 6 nights a month. Again, if there's 30 days in a month, that's 24 that you are not. Like you look at over a year, like if you did this 12 months, which again, many people probably skip 1 month, like they only do it once because they've got a vacation or they've got, Christmas or something like that. But probably we're talking like, let's say 65 nights over the course of the year, even on this very travel heavy schedule. So that means that 300 nights of the year you are home, like even with this very intense travel schedule. Like, and I've had people do this, like somebody who is like telling herself, oh, I need to like take a different job, leave my job. I like my job, but a working mother can't do this. Like I'm gone all the time. She's at the same hotel chain. So she actually looks at it. What is the number of nights like I'm getting in my points thing? And again, it's like 50 nights over the course of a year, which means that I get more than 300 nights she's home. And so it's like, why are you talking yourself into this idea that it's this harsh trade-off? Like you're never home. Clearly you are home. You're home almost all the time. Like we don't need to look at it this way.
Laura, your next book is going to be called Work Guilt. And you are spending time with your family. Like
yes.
It would be perfect.
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay, I have my last question, and then we're going to end with some humor.
Yes.
And this is not about the book, Laura, but everybody's talking about AI these days. What's your perspective on the topic as it relates to time management? In just a moment or two. I know this could be in a whole hour, but
yeah. Well, I think AI is a tool like anything else. And people can use it to make themselves more productive. They can also use it to waste a ton of time. One of my favorite sort of historical Onion headlines in that, Our Dumb Century book, The Onion, the satirical newspaper, they had a headline of like, the television would be like the genius boxes. Schools will be obsolete by 1962. Like clearly, okay, yes, we can learn some awesome things from TV. People also wasted a ton of time watching television. Same thing with our smartphones. Like can we make ourselves more productive on our phones? Absolutely. Can we waste a ton of time on our phones? Yep. I think it's going to be the exact same thing with AI. I'm already laughing about the number of like AI generated emails, which are then summarized by my AI on the other end. So nobody, we've got these longer emails that nobody's reading anyway. I mean, somebody else, AI wrote it, AI is reading it. Like it could have just been a 2-line email and that would have been fine anyway. But, I think people can use it for one thing I've seen people do is if they've tracked their time, feed it in to one of the AI agents and say, I'm curious, any patterns you notice, or I would like to spend more time on X, like, what are some ideas I could try? That is something that you could ask. That is something that would work, or certainly it can create nifty pie charts for you if you would like.
Sure.
Um, and I've also seen people. I wouldn't do this, but I think I'm sort of more into scheduling and prioritizing than I think a lot of other people are. But that they'll give it, your inbox, your calendar, list of ongoing projects. Tell me what 3 things I should focus on today. Now that's core time management, prioritization. I'd like to think you should know what those 3 things are, that you can look at what's going on and tell yourself what those 3 things are. But if you have trouble with that, then that is absolutely something that a good executive assistant could have helped you on, like a good chief of staff could help you on. But if you don't have that, you can ask Claude, and Claude will probably sell you as well. So, that's a way I've seen people use it.
Yeah, super helpful. Just like your book, thank you for helping us zoom out and sort of see this in the whole context of history and not as just some like earth-shattering point.
Yeah.
Over to you, Jason.
And so as we close out this really wonderful conversation, we like to bring a little smile, a little joy for our listeners. As a working parent, is there a funny story or joke that you like to share or talk about to help us wrap up this great conversation?
Well, it's funny. My 6-year-old has become a bit of my book champion. He just found out that I write books and write for a living, and so now he can't stop talking about it, which is really funny because it's not always a great topic of conversation. He was in the school nurse's office yesterday because he fell and skinned his knee and bumped his head or whatever on the playground, and so she calls me because I guess they always call about head injuries or whatever, and so she calls me and she's like, "Yeah, he's here. He's okay. Also, he's been telling me about your books." It's like, I was looking for some summer reading, so I'll check it out.
There you go.
You've got a little walking brand ambassador
I've got
there.
a little walking brand ambassador now.
Yes, brilliant,
That's awesome.
Laura. Thank you
Love
for
it,
sharing
love
that.
it.
Thank you for sharing your precious hour with us. We are so grateful for this conversation. It was really fun. Congratulations on your new book, and we will continue to follow you in all the ways.
Thanks so
Yes.
much. It was great being here.
Thank
Get
you,
big
Laura.
time.
Great use of time. Big
Yes.
time. Okay.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.